Have you ever lined up the perfect shot in the finals, only for your reticle to bounce all over the screen just as you pull the trigger? I mean, look, with explosions and chaos everywhere, it's challenging enough, but why does the weapon have to have this crazy sway and this ridiculous reticle bounce that actually holds back players who are committed to improving their aim? But does the weapon sway and reticle bounce actually hold back players who are committed to improving their aim here? Today, I'm diving in. I'm diving into why these mechanics might be doing much more harm than good for skilled players on both mouse and keyboard and controller alike. So let's go ahead, let's lock in, and let's get to it. First off, the finals, we all know, is mad intense. It's a high octane game with non-stop action and absolute destruction all around you. But then when you add in weapon sway that's ridiculous and this crazy reticle bounce, it feels like the game is almost actively working against players who spend countless hours to do nothing but hone their craft, perfect their aim, and learn recoil patterns, you know? And look, it doesn't matter if you're a controller, player, or if you rock out on mouse and keyboard, the sway and the bounce negate much of the skill involved in flicking to targets, tracking them precisely, and pulling off those really satisfying shots. You can still hit them, don't get it twisted, but they come at a lot less of a frequency than they should. On top of that, I gotta talk a bit about how visually jarring it gets, yo. Like, picture this. You're in the middle of a match, you know? Explosions to the left of you, explosions to the right of you, structures falling apart everywhere. And as you're trying to shoot, your reticle is just bouncing everywhere, yo. All that movement can make it nearly impossible to stay on target, especially in a game where visuals are just mad chaotic on their own. Instead of rewarding precise aim and control, it feels like the game is just adding unnecessary obstacles, and it only makes it harder to focus and actually track your target amidst the chaos. You know, I gotta be honest, I gotta be transparent, it really feels like it artificially impacts aim in a negative fashion, you know? It doesn't feel like it is truly testing a player's true skill. Rather, it feels like just an added layer that undermines a player's true ability, you know? And look, I'm not saying it all needs to be gone. I understand it's there for a reason and a purpose, but imagine if we could reduce the weapon sway by, like, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 50%, for instance, along with removing reticle bounce altogether. Well, unless there's a legitimate reason for it, like getting shot, so the reticle bounce contributes to flinch or something, or just being in a high intensity destruction zone, for lack of a better term. Reasons like that, I can understand why it's bouncing around a bit, you know what I mean? But ultimately, this change would allow for us to see much more skill-based gunplay, and it would give dedicated players a better way to showcase the time they have put into grinding their aim. I guess a sidebar to that is I think the meta would shift a bit too, right? We probably would go away from a lot of those medium builds running around with the model 1887, and maybe they would be more apt to rock an FCAR or AKM instead. That might be a reach, but it's also plausible. And look, I gotta be very clear here. As I mentioned before, I don't mind some level of sway, you know, or a little bit of reticle bounce in certain situations, right? If you're hit by an explosion, even if you're free falling a little bit, right? It doesn't make sense to be 100% accurate while you're free falling, or even if you're getting shot, right? We can contribute that reticle bounce to flinch, for lack of a better term. In these cases, yes, it would make sense to have some crosshair or reticle reaction, but when you're just standing still, you're carefully lining up your crosshair, and that added movement comes into play, it just feels unnecessary, yo. It genuinely does, and it's even frustrating. When it comes to having an answer for these things, I think I mentioned it earlier in this video, I think a simple reduction in weapon sway by, again, 30 to 50%. I'm not a developer, so I don't know what that looks like in-game, but just adjusting it in some capacity would make a world of a difference, you know? And again, removing that random reticle bounce when firing, unless there's something happening in game that causes it, this would help players so much more in regards to exhibiting skill under pressure without having their aim thrown off unnecessarily. And look, I'm not the best player in the world by a long shot, but I know it's frustrating to me. I could only imagine what it's like for high-level players. There may be some high-level players that have left the finals as a result of this. Shucks, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe even low-level players as well, the people that have been working their tail off to track and they realize the reticle bounces everywhere. It could be frustrating, debilitating, and they leave and go back to Call of Duty. Who knows though, I'm just spitballing here. But with that all being said, I have to turn the mic to you all. What do you all think? Do you all agree that the finals could benefit from toning down the weapon sway and or reticle bounce? Or do you think it adds something important to the game's chaotic environment? Please drop your thoughts down in the comments below, and please keep it civil. Again, we're just having a good conversation, that's all. Thank you all so much for coming and watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace!